These videos are sponsored by the Wargames Research Group. So you're interested in getting started in ancient or medieval wargaming? Maybe you're coming from the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, you're a fan of the Total War series, or maybe you're just a historical wargamer who's coming from something like Bold Action or Black Powder, and you're looking for an entry point into this era of historical wargaming. Now the thing about this period of wargaming is just the huge variety of rule sets there are to get into, but the one that stands out above the rest is Phil Barker's DBMM. What makes DBMM my preferred rule set for the period that I've been exclusively using for several years now? Well, first of all, it's scale agnostic, so whether you like to do your wargaming in 28, 15 or even 6mm, then DBMM can accommodate that. You'll be seeing in this video lots of 6mm scale figures, which is my preferred size for ancient wargaming, but whatever you want to do, DBMM can accommodate. My recommendation, see what scale your local wargaming club is playing in, so that you'll always have an army that can be played against an opponent. The thing that really sets DBMM apart is the historical depth of research that comes along with a game system. When you pick up the game rules, you'll be getting yourself one of these, the main rulebook, and then at least one of these army books, each covering a particular period of history. The first book includes everything before the year 500 BC, starting with the early Sumerians, taking you all the way back to the earliest history of Mesopotamia, and this carries on all the way through to the end of the Roman monarchy. The armies of these books are mostly dominated by chariot warfare in the first half, and includes all the things for fighting battles in the Iliad and the starts of the Greco-Persian Wars. The second book stretches from the foundation of the Roman Republic to the fall of the Western Roman Empire, so that includes the classic 3 lines of the Roman Republic, lists for Hannibal, the Gauls, then Imperial Rome, the Huns, the Goths, as well as Alexander the Great and his successor empires. But it's not just focused on Europe, and you get detailed lists for armies such as the Han Chinese, the Gupta Empire, and many more. Book 3 takes us through what many call the Dark Ages, all the way up to 1071 AD, which is the Battle of Manzikert, which fatally weakened the Byzantine Empire. This has numerous lists for the Byzantines, different eras of Islamic history, the Vikings, the Anglo-Saxons, medieval Europe, and of course the Normans, so you can refight the Battle of Hastings. And finally, Book 4 is the High Medieval era and picks up where Book 3 left off and takes us all the way into the period of transition to heavy plate armoured knights, ending at the sort of armies you would see at the Battle of Agincourt. In here you see the rise of the Mongols, the Timurids, the Ottoman Empire, including their army at the fall of Constantinople, as well as the armies that covered early Sengoku Jidai Japanese. Book 4 goes all the way up to 1525 as we start to see the earliest handguns and black powder artillery pieces entering the battlefield. For those of you used to sci-fi gaming, you might think of these as your codexes. You're getting 313 armies over the 4 books, some of which contain different time periods and sub-lists, and every army list gives you both all the troops that can be fielded by that force and a short historical background on the army you'll be portraying. I don't know any rule system that has this level of variety and depth for its army lists, and that's mostly because they've been developing the research for them for over 40 years. I happen to know a lot of historical gamers of this period use these army books, even if they're playing other systems, because they're about as good as you can get in terms of information on putting together a historical wargaming army. Thirdly, sticking with the army list, you'll find that each unit in the army has an associated points cost. This makes it great for finding pick-up games and list building, as you can build an army from the standard point size, usually 350 or 400 points, and show up at your club, and as long as there are DBMM players there, you can get a game. The point system is incredibly well balanced. There are dozens of equally viable ways of putting together an army, whether you want a small elite force or a large army of lower quality troops. Very few units won't be able to find a place in your army. This is definitely not a Warhammer 40,000 situation where certain units and certain codexes are going to be wildly superior to others. Although 350 to 400 points is the standard played on a 6x4 board, it can be played at 100 or 200 points on smaller tables, and these games usually only take 60 to 90 minutes. And these smaller 200 point games I think are a great way for people to get started and learn the hobby. Here in the UK, as well as in other parts of Europe, as well as in certain countries such as New Zealand, there are active tournament scenes. So if you're looking for a game that you can really throw yourself into and master, there's a huge amount of depth to the rule set, and the skill ceiling on the game is incredibly high. That all said, it's not all tournaments and competitive gaming. DBMM is just as good for historical refights. I recently used the system to refight the Battle of Yarmouk, and the historical accuracy of the army lists are a great help. So how does the game play? The real brilliance of the system, and the fourth reason I love DBMM, is the abstraction of troop types. Each troop type handles movement, terrain, and combat differently. So aggressive, heavy shock infantry like Roman legionaries are classified as blades, while Greek hoplites are classified as spears. There are then 4 universal modifiers for each troop type. They can either be superior, ordinary, inferior, or fast. So elite Spartan hoplites are classified as spears superior, while a hastily raised Anglo-Saxon peasant shield wall might be spears inferior. These abstracted unit types give enough nuance to capture the different fighting styles of the ancient and medieval world without bogging you down and having to learn unique rules for thousands of different unit types. By combining those 4 factors and 18 different land units, you can learn what every unit in the game does quickly, and the variety of the challenge of each army is how you put together a limited combination that allows your army to fight as an effective force. Units have unique combat resolution depending on their unit type and who they're fighting, and these pairings create realistic feeling historical outcomes when units come face to face. The 5th reason I play DBMM almost exclusively is the excellent morale system. Morale is hugely important for representing the period. During most ancient and medieval battles, the majority of casualties didn't occur on the battlefield, but in the rout and pursuit that followed afterwards when one side lost its nerve and broke. DBMM uses a simple system. When a command breaks, it transfers morale damage to wavering troops nearby, which can often precipitate a rout of the entire army. It's a system that a lot of Total War players will likely be familiar with, and it makes engagements decisive and stops them from devolving into a slog, and provides a real historical outcome to the combat. That leads on to the 6th and final thing that makes DBMM great. It makes you feel like an ancient general and presents the problems an ancient general would face. Terrain is incredibly important, your ability to control your troops are limited, and deployment is just as important as manoeuvre as it was on the ancient battlefield. You're presented with all of the problems of an ancient commander, including things like the weather and unreliable allied commanders, and you are given the tactics an ancient commander would use. You can leave troops lying in ambush, send detachments on flank marches, or feign flights to break up an enemy formation. Soon you stop thinking in terms of game rules and start thinking like a battlefield commander, about feints and attacks and delaying actions, and that's a sign of a really good historical war game. I want to get this content out to as many people who are interested in wargaming as possible. So if you found this interesting, then please subscribe, like the video, and that'll help it be seen by more people. Check the channel next week for more DBMM content.